Hello and welcome to the latest weekly Dinosaw. This is week 16. Technically I'm on the holiday, but I thought you might need a Dinosaw this week. So these are 7 interesting, curious, innovative things I thought you might need to know about, whether you like it or not. So first one, 3D printing. Now, as you might see behind me, I have a 3D printer. It can be quite a lonely pursuit, should we say. But finally, 3D printing hobbyists and home users have had their call to action with the COVID-19, and you might have also seen the NHS and lots of other places running out of protective equipment. This is now something that 3D printing enthusiasts can help with. So people like Aston Martin or Nike or Formula One teams as well have retooled their assembly lines to create some of the more exotic parts of the medical equipment, so respirator valves and that sort of thing. So things that might need to go through maybe an autoclave or some sterilizing process that, quite frankly, the plastic out of these things can't really handle. So there are plenty of other things you can make. So this is a really good example, and this is actually from with Inside Sky as well. So if you search on Yammer for the 3D printing group who are helping the NHS, this is Antonio's setup, for instance, and thank you for Antonio for letting me use the photo. But this is creating the headbands. So these are multiple headbands, and you separate them all out, put a piece of acetate on the front, and you have a perfectly usable protective piece of equipment. And also there are now sort of networks of people who are finding the right places that need these things as well. So you don't have to sit at home and make these things and say, well, do I drive down to my local hospital? There are sort of networks that can come and pick them up and distribute them as well. So 3D printers, this one's from Aldi of all places, about £200 I think I paid for it. You can buy them as low as £95 as well. So if you have one, look for the group on Yammer and search out the group. They're doing some great things. Second one is a little trickier to explain. So this is actually essentially using natural language processing within websites. So natural language processing is where you can ask a natural language question. So what is the, and how many of the, those sorts of things, and it can find the answer in a sort of a connected way. So normally if you go to a web page and you find within a web page, it only finds the words that you've typed in, literally one-to-one. But if you use something like Alexa or any sort of the sort of assistants, then it will actually take the context and the concept of what you're saying and try and find the answer within the data it has. So that normally takes a huge amount of cloud processing and is only available to the likes of Apple or Google. Not anymore. So now you can actually have this within your browser. This is a Chrome plugin doing exactly the same thing. So locally on your machine. So that can be on a mobile or on a laptop or on a computer. So this is using natural language processing on a website. So this is kind of big news in a sort of slightly quirky, nerdy way. So all of a sudden, if you have a database of information, people can now search for it using normal answers and normal language to try and find the actual answer. So again, if you're in natural language processing or NLP field, this is a big deal. Yeah, the third one, now I'm not going to go into any of this, but the only reason I'm featuring, say, Pornhub is a lot of companies have, within the response to COVID-19, have given their product away for free, or at least online access to certain parts of their product. So we've seen everybody from parking, online parking, for instance, giving NHS workers free parking spaces. We've seen it from Adobe giving Creative Suite access as well. Internet companies, mobile phone companies, we've seen all sorts of people giving access to things that might help people out. Now, the only reason I'm calling out Pornhub is they have a long history of this sort of activism, and they were one of the first, and it seemed a bit tongue-in-cheek at the time, but huge amounts of companies have followed. So obviously when the lockdown started in Italy, Pornhub just said, well, you know, to make it a little bit easier, you get free access to our premium service. So I just thought, you know, it's more the meta point of this one that a lot of companies, as you have been seeing, have been giving free access to certain parts that make sense. Yes, it is a bit of a try before you buy, and they'll probably see a spike afterwards in their sales. iPad Pro, so Apple have released a few more details of the new upcoming iPad Pro. It's already a really expensive piece of kit with a lot of expensive stuff in it, and it's got even more expensive stuff in it, and it's become even more expensive. However, one of the more interesting parts in there, other than the great processor and the audio processing and all that sort of goodness, is the LiDAR piece of kit, basically. And a LiDAR is a sort of a light mapping tool, and it can 3D map invisibly the room in front of you or an object in front of you. So if you, for instance, have seen augmented reality where an item is placed in front of you in your reality, then that's usually done just on the visual of the camera trying to infer what the shape of the room is. If you have a LiDAR camera, it can actually scatter light, a bit like the Xbox Kinect used to do, and it can actually very, very accurately see the 3D space that you are in. So for instance, if it needs to put an object behind a chair or behind a TV, it can do, because it knows the 3D shape of those objects. It also has some goodness built in, so it can automatically cut out humans. Essentially, it can green screen humans against the 3D world as well. So if you also work in VR or AR, then you can actually use the LiDAR feature to scan objects and put them into the 3D world. So a super amazing feature. Watch out for the iPad Pro if you can afford it. So Geely, you've probably never heard of Geely, but Chinese auto manufacturer and industrial conglomerate. You've probably heard of Volvo, you've probably heard of Lotus, you've probably heard of London taxis, the electric ones, for instance. Geely own all of those. So they're a huge, huge company you've probably never heard of. So one of the results of reducing the lockdown in China is that not a huge amount of people have really got a need or a want to go on public transport anymore. They really want their own private transport. So we're seeing a surge in car sales, but obviously they don't also want to go to the dealership. So Geely have allowed you to not only buy but also customise, that also have delivered your car without a single person coming into contact with you from the dealership. So you can do it all online, spec it, do whatever you want to do. At the dealership, they will disinfect it thoroughly. They will put special N95 filters in there, which are essentially will filter out 95% of all particulates and bacteria in the environment. And also when you get to the dealership, it's like, well, how do you pick up your keys? So this is where the bit of PR fluff comes in, and they will actually fly the keys across the car park with a drone. So yes, it's a bit of PR, but it's just interesting. How can there be a lack of human contact in your supply chain so you can deliver things? I thought it was interesting when the government sent around a letter to say, please stay at home. It was delivered. So we're thinking at home like, well, who touched that? And the post person who has touched everybody's gate and everybody's door is like, should we put this in the microwave for a bit? So it's interesting how a car manufacturer can apply it to their entire infrastructure. It's worth mentioning Dogbot, just out of nowhere. So this is Gaetano De Chico, and is a designer, and if you've ever seen any of his work before, then you'll know that he designs things like aliens and futuristic cars and that sort of thing. I just thought it was really interesting that it had a go at designing a futuristic pet. Or Dogbot. As far as I'm aware, this has got nothing to actually do with Samsung. I think he just puts logos on things to make them look cool. I think he's done this sort of thing with Dyson before. But what was interesting about this, I haven't been to a lot of conferences with robots and all that sort of stuff, is they're trying to make them cute and appeal to people. And this one isn't. So I just thought it was interesting envisioning what a pet might look like when you stop trying to be Disney and cute, and by playing by the psychology of what we're trying to achieve as a pet or as a thing that we trust. So obviously you've got a little picture here with a slightly strangely rendered small child teaching the child about butterflies. So interesting. And finally we've got Pixar, and we've seen as I mentioned right at the beginning, a lot of companies are doing a lot of things to give people their product for free, and we've seen other people that are sort of gearing up new products. And Pixar did something that was essentially free for them to do, but it was such a great thing to do. So they gave away their backgrounds to their animated features. So you've got Toy Story, you've got Ratatouille, you've got Nemo and Cars, all that sort of stuff. So these you can download for free. I think I found them on Twitter, and you can put these on your team's background. So clearly, if it's a super professional meeting, you might want to hold back on this, but adds a bit of fun to your weekly teams meeting. So just a really nice gesture, and yeah, more of that, please. So that's it for this week, and I will see you next week. Thank you.